So why don't you lead it, since you were always the leader of the
Why not?
of the focus groups?
That sounds good. So, I guess when I started thinking about it, it's been a few months. It's been a while since we first started talking about Certifiably LIT, this whole idea of learning, inspiring, and teaching. And when I kind of think of it, sometimes I wonder, where did it all originate, right? It all started out with this whole idea of building skills, if I'm correct, right? Building
Yes.
skills, building your brand, and all these things. But what I noticed was that we just kind of added, it was one sense to have this interpersonal building of skills, but now taking those skills and putting purpose to it, right?
Yes.
We're putting a purpose to it, this whole idea of how do we now impact the community? Impact the community by building our skills, building our brand, building our community. Almost just adding that aspect to it. And in our program, we did that through infection control, right? This whole idea of using hand washing as a way of uniting the community against one common issue, and that was people getting sick. So what do you think is some of the major things about what was one big highlight or one reason why you thought the program was important?
I always thought the program was important because you can learn while you can teach at the same time. And I have 3 kids, and it was very interesting as they were growing up. I realized that they stopped listening to me a little bit more and more. I hate to say it, admit it, but at one point, I thought to myself, well, you can't take this personally. Your job is to be a father, and your job is to be effective. So what is the best method of getting them to do what is good for them? It doesn't matter if I'm right. It matters if they're effective.
Definitely.
So I had an example where I was playing squash, and my son was playing squash too, and I was teaching him how to play. I was a little bit better than him at that point, and he would not listen to me at all. He would not listen to me, and it was very frustrating. Then I started thinking, why don't I just talk to the squash pro? So I said, hey, Jess, can you get Nikki to do this? He's like, yeah, he should be doing this. So he tells Nikki to do it, and 2 seconds later, Nikki's doing it.
He's doing it.
He's doing it, and I tried to get him to do it for months.
Yeah.
Then I started thinking to myself, you know what? I was a kid way back when, and I didn't like listening to adults. I'd rather listen to my peers. So if my job is to teach, and your job is to teach, why don't we teach the kids how to teach kids?
Exactly, this peer-to-peer model,
Yeah,
right?
if it's all about getting it done and getting it done in an effective, efficient way, why not teach the teachers?
Exactly.
Take your ego out of it, work with the kids, impart to them skills and knowledge, and have them impart it to somebody else.
Exactly. I guess that's what we did, right? Over the last 5 weeks, we had almost 11 guys, 12 or 13.
Well, it depends on what day it was.
On the days, right? And we did just that. We tried to develop this peer-to-peer teaching model where we took ourselves out of it. We became facilitators, not even teachers, facilitators of creating this program where students can learn more about hand washing through their peers telling the story, right?
Well, we created the delivery system.
Exactly.
We didn't deliver the message.
No.
We just helped create the delivery system and helped create the deliverers.
Exactly.
With that, and the deliverers happen to be peers, because the kids listen to each other. They just do. And I think it's important for adults to take themselves out of the equation and concentrate on what they're really trying to do is try to be effective. We're trying to get this message out there, trying to get kids healthier, trying to have them wash their hands so they can control infections. It's just low-hanging fruit out there. And it's really amazing. I would tell somebody about the infection control. They're like, ooh, this sounds, all this highfalutin. Right? Then I was like, no, it's just hand washing. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, really. According to the CDC, hand washing is the most effective way to mitigate against colds and flus. Better than drugs, better than shots, better than other things. And we've talked about this, the domino effect that kids have, particularly kids that are on the margins too. They can't afford to miss school.
No.
They cannot afford to miss school. And so we were able to impart to our students what actually happens 4 or 5 moves down the chessboard. I like to tell them, we play chess here, not checkers.
Completely different ball game, right?
Completely different ball game. And one of the things, we've talked about this before, if you talk with the kids, not at them, all of a sudden they become a participant in this. And they take it and they actually own it. They become invested in it. They own it. And they actually want to impart it to somebody else because they've learned what's important.
And that was a big part of the class too, right? This idea of learning was important. We had a whole research aspect. We spent about a week or so just researching what's credible information. The CDC versus, like you would say, Joe's blog, right?
Yeah, Joe's blog. Like, okay. Well, I read it on the internet. Well, in my day, that was like
Yeah.
I read it in the newspaper.
Mhm.
So what's the credibility? Well, if you read it in the New York Times, it was different than reading it from the give out paper
Yeah.
down the block.
Well, see, that was a big part of it, right? And the research kind of built the foundation for the program. We started teaching students how to teach themselves, right? What's the websites you go to? What are the organizations you rely on? How do you become armed with your own information?
Yeah, and all research is not the
Yep.
same.
Mm-hmm.
The CDC is quite more important than Joe's blog,
Yeah.
like we said. you know. And
It's so
it was,
different,
It was
yeah.
really, and it was really interesting because I remember one of the discussions we had. It was about GIFs.
Yeah.
Remember we were talking about
Yeah.
GIFs versus GIF.
Mm-hmm.
And I had heard the guy who invented the GIF talk about, well, it's pronounced GIF like the ice, like the
Yeah.
peanut butter.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the kids came back and they said, well, I read it on the
Yeah.
internet. And I was like,
How do you
well,
pronounce
yeah, how do you
yeah.
pronounce it? And so you can find whatever you want to find. And I think one of the things that we did was we lended credibility to the discussion and the importance of the discussion that they will have with other people. Like, yes, we took this, anybody can look at our stuff that we did
Yeah.
and ask us to cite the sources, and we will cite the sources.
Exactly.
We included the CDC, the NIH, all the sources that were many of the sources that are very reputable, and people, they're the gold standards, they're the benchmarks. So why not use those when you're trying to impart something?
Exactly. And there's also, I'm sure, the next task was us trying to take that research and doing this brainstorming session. How do you now get 11 or 12 guys, 17, 18, 19, working together towards one common cause? The whole idea of, at first, what should the peer-to-peer teaching model look like? What should it accomplish? And then again, how do we make sure that it's engaging our target audience? Like this whole brainstorming session trying to accomplish those
I thought
goals.
the brainstorming sessions, particularly in an all-male school
Yeah.
that's very athletic,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like a locker room when it first started out. And we
Yeah.
had to establish rules for this.
Mm-hmm.
And to establish, we talked about what's the importance of brainstorming and why it's so important.
Yeah.
And how anything goes.
Mm-hmm.
And when I mean anything goes, like all ideas, the crazier the idea is fine. The judgment cannot be put on other people
No.
because you can build off that crazy idea.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody can build off your crazy idea. So I thought that was a really interesting exercise for them to do, to actually pull themselves back. Because I know a lot of them, they were like chomping at the bit, like they wanted to say something because some of the ideas were outrageous.
Yeah.
And that was good.
They were, yeah.
That was very good. That was part of what we were trying to do. But to establish some rules and some procedures in there and to have them understand the importance of brainstorming
Yeah.
also showed them the importance of working together as a team.
Yeah, and also being aware that everyone's experience kind of shaped their voices.
Yes.
What I might think might be different from yours because we come from two different places, right? We're going to look at our approach differently. And that's something we also want the students to be aware of, right?
I think you bring up a really interesting point is because yes, we don't look the same, we're not from the same thing, but our goals were the same.
Yep. And we work together.
And we work together to
them.
achieve the goals, and I think that was another really good lesson to impart to the kids and also live it too.
Yep.
They had to see us living it too. We had to live by example with these kind of things. Like we have to be able to say, yeah, I made it a little crazy. That's okay. But our goals when we first started talking about this were the same. And I think in life, if you can get this, have people working on the same goals, but from different backgrounds, they have different views of things. They've seen different things from other people.
Yeah.
And like to use all that collective wisdom together to try to arrive at a common purpose and a common goal.
Yeah.
To me, that is one of the most exciting things I think we accomplished this
Yeah.
month. It was like that was very. That I really was touched by that, to have to see some of the kids work together with this, sort of pull back, 5-10%, not be as aggressive
Yeah.
as they normally would be, but also to be aggressively thinking in a positive way was really. I don't want to use the word beautiful, but it was beautiful. It really was beautiful to see kids act in a very human way for a common purpose. It was together. It was united. It was really like a good way of uniting them together. And I think they really were able to claim it and then to actually start building upon other people's ideas. And I mean, we changed what we were going to do originally.
Yeah, we started out this whole idea of like presentations in each classroom, each student going, prepping them for, this public speaking idea. But we realized too, like as the world is transitioning, everything's becoming so social media based. How do we now take this information and not only impact St. Benedict's, but impact the world, right?
Well, and I think from our research, we saw that because the first week that we had, we were researching hand washing videos.
Yep.
And they were pretty horrible. I mean,
well, see, we filled the need, right?
I think, and we said that, well, maybe we can get actually a hand washing video,
Yeah.
infection control video that peers make it that actually speaks to peers.
Exactly.
And one of the things that we've talked about with our guys is if you don't like it, your peers aren't going to like it.
It's true.
So you're the audience. So if you don't like it, then it's probably not good.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the thing is, we kind of took that researching, that brainstorming, and then made a transition to storytelling where we're now weaving this information, these ideas, and putting it together to tell this story. How do we now present the information to our audience in a way that is engaging, in a way that's informative, but also in a way that's innovative? Because it couldn't be just like any other video we saw.
Well, most of the ones we saw were
right?
for hospitals, and they were. I mean, they
So
were
we had
very
to break the
they were
mold.
very clinical,
Yeah.
and so what we tried to do is take, like, I call it the buffet approach. You know, you take a little here,
Right
you
here.
take a little there,
Yeah.
a little, and then all of a sudden you're cooking this really interesting recipe that you've created that is innovative and it tastes different than something else, but yet people can see the simplicity with it too.
Yeah.
And I thought that was one of the things that we did very well was we simplified this.
Yeah.
We really did. Like, all of a sudden we had all this research and this and that. And it was like, okay, guys, let's just funnel this down into getting the storytelling mode down. Like, okay, how do you tell a story? And I thought that was one of the more effective things that we did this month was the storytelling aspect of it. What are they going to have to do when they're in college? They're going to tell stories with essays. They're going to tell stories at work. They're going to tell stories. So it's really about the narrative of storytelling. I heard Steven Spielberg talk once. They said, well, what do you do? He said, I'm a storyteller.
Storyteller, yeah.
Not a director, not a producer, I'm a storyteller. And I think when we started talking about this originally, the storytelling aspect was, to me, one of the more important elements of what we did.
Yeah,
I mean, we could take all
definitely.
this great research and have all this great music. If we're not able to tell the story, then it's not going to be effective.
Yeah, what's the information out of the delivery system, right? And this whole idea, I guess, what's one thing I enjoy too is the authenticity of it. They didn't tell a story of another high school somewhere else. They didn't tell the story that we told them to tell. They told this story that many of them shared. They know what it is to go into the HAB bathroom, wash your hands. You know what it is to kind of see someone come out of the stall and not wash their hands. They told the story through their eyes, something that they have seen, and they want to kind of expose, shed some light on the experiences and the practice that happened at their school, and let the rest of the world know that's what's going on. And how do we now speak up and empowering them to speak up and use their voice against practices that can negatively affect their health? And I think that was really important too.
I think I'll take a little. I thought the more research they did, I hate to say it like this way, but the more disgusted they became.
Oh yeah.
And realizing how simple hand washing is, but how yet it's not used very often. I mean, some of the statistics we had in our video, we didn't put a lot of statistics in there. We didn't really need to. But the big one was 2 out of 3 men do not wash their hands after they use the restroom.
Yeah,
that's
striking,
shocking, striking, disgusting. A lot of things, and I feel like once they got that information and once they found it, and we were guiding them finding it, that they really thought, well, this is an important story to tell. And not only is it important, we actually can tell it, and we actually can tell it and get the outcomes that we want to get too. Or at least we talked about this. This is a faith-based thing, right? It's very difficult to prove that if you wash your hands that you're going to get an A instead of a B+.
It's true.
That's very difficult to prove. But we all know that it's the right thing to do.
We all know it's a factor that plays a large role.
It's a factor, and particularly when you're on the margins too. And so I thought that was really important that they claimed the importance of actually telling the story and telling it in a manner, in a method that is actually effectual. I thought that was one of the better things that we did.
Yeah.